What if I told you that the ancient biblical concept of the shekel is about to make a dramatic comeback in the digital age? What if the very currency mentioned throughout Scripture could be the blueprint for a new global economic system that's already being tested in laboratories and central banks around the world? Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating intersections of ancient wisdom and modern technology that nobody is talking about. The shekel isn't just an old coin mentioned in dusty biblical texts. It represents something far more profound, a divinely inspired economic principle that could revolutionize how we think about money, value, and human dignity in the 21st century. As governments worldwide race to implement central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, we need to ask ourselves a critical question: are we witnessing the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, or are we sleepwalking into a financial system that could either liberate or enslave humanity? Let me start with a story that will blow your mind. In ancient Israel, the shekel wasn't just currency. It was a sacred measurement, a standard of fairness ordained by God Himself. When Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah to bury Sarah, he paid 400 shekels of silver. This wasn't just a transaction. It was a covenant, a sacred exchange that established ownership, dignity, and divine order. The Hebrew word shekel comes from the root meaning to weigh, implying that true currency must have measurable, tangible value. Fast forward 3,000 years, and we find ourselves at another pivotal moment in monetary history. Central banks from China to Sweden, from Nigeria to the Bahamas, are launching digital versions of their national currencies. These aren't cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. These are government-controlled, programmable money systems that can track every transaction, control spending behaviors, and potentially implement social credit scores that would make Orwell's Big Brother look like amateur hour. But here's where it gets really interesting. The biblical principles embedded in the original shekel system contain wisdom that could guide us toward a digital currency that serves humanity rather than enslaving it. The scriptures don't just mention money randomly. They provide a comprehensive framework for ethical economics that we've largely ignored in our rush toward technological innovation. Consider this: in Leviticus chapter 19 verse 36, God commands the Israelites to have honest scales, honest weights, and honest measures. The Hebrew word for honest here is tzedek, which means righteousness or justice. This isn't just about preventing fraud. It's about creating an economic system that reflects divine character, transparent, fair, and serving the common good rather than enriching a privileged few. Now imagine a digital currency built on these principles. Instead of the current banking system where a small group of central bankers can print money out of thin air, devaluing everyone else's savings, we could have a system with built-in transparency and accountability. Every digital shekel could be backed by real value, tracked on an immutable ledger, and programmed to prevent the kind of monetary manipulation that has plagued humanity for centuries. The technology already exists. Blockchain networks can create currencies that are simultaneously digital and sound, programmable yet decentralized, efficient yet private. The question isn't whether we can build biblical money for the digital age. The question is whether we will choose to do so, or whether we'll allow governments and corporations to implement systems that concentrate power rather than distributing it. Let's talk about what's happening right now in the real world. China's digital yuan is already being tested in major cities, giving the Communist Party unprecedented control over citizens' spending habits. They can program the currency to expire if not spent by certain dates, restrict purchases of items the government disapproves of, and track every financial interaction down to buying a cup of coffee. This isn't speculation. This is happening today. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the government launched the e-naira and simultaneously restricted access to cash and traditional banking, essentially forcing citizens into a system where their financial privacy has been completely eliminated. The results have been predictable: economic disruption, increased poverty, and growing social unrest as people realize they've lost fundamental economic freedoms. But it doesn't have to be this way. The biblical model offers a different path forward. When Jesus cleansed the temple, he wasn't just angry about corruption. He was defending the principle that sacred spaces and honest commerce must go hand in hand. The money changers weren't just cheating people. They were violating the divine order that says economic systems should serve human flourishing rather than exploiting human weakness. Think about the year of Jubilee described in Leviticus chapter 25. Every 50 years, debts were forgiven, slaves were freed, and land was returned to its original owners. This wasn't just charity. It was a systematic reset that prevented the permanent concentration of wealth and power. Imagine programming similar principles into a digital currency: automatic debt forgiveness protocols, wealth redistribution mechanisms, and built-in protections against economic slavery. The early church in Acts chapter 2 provides another model. They held all things in common, sharing resources according to need rather than hoarding wealth. This wasn't communism in the modern sense. It was voluntary community based on love and mutual care. Digital currencies could facilitate this kind of sharing economy, enabling instant, low-cost transfers that make generosity practical and efficient. But here's what really keeps me up at night. The book of Revelation describes a time when no one can buy or sell without a specific mark or number. For centuries, this seemed like impossible science fiction. Today, it looks like inevitable technological progression. We're already moving toward a cashless society. Most transactions happen electronically. Our phones contain digital wallets. Our purchases are tracked by algorithms that know our habits better than we do. The infrastructure for a mark of the beast system isn't coming. It's here. The question is what we do with it. Do we passively accept whatever system governments and corporations design for us? Or do we actively work to implement biblical principles that protect human dignity and economic freedom? I believe we're at a crossroads that will determine the economic future of humanity. We can have digital currencies that embody biblical values, honest weights and measures, protection for the poor and vulnerable, transparency and accountability for those in power, and systems that encourage generosity rather than greed. Or we can sleepwalk into a dystopian future where every financial transaction is monitored, controlled, and potentially weaponized against us. The technology itself is morally neutral. Blockchain can be used to create liberating systems or oppressive ones. Artificial intelligence can serve human flourishing or human control. Digital currencies can protect privacy or eliminate it entirely. The difference lies in the values and principles we embed in the code. Here's what a biblical digital currency might look like in practice. First, it would have intrinsic value tied to real assets rather than being created out of nothing by central banks. Second, it would have built-in privacy protections that prevent government surveillance while maintaining transparency for large transactions that could indicate corruption or fraud. Third, it would include automatic tithing and charity mechanisms that make generosity effortless and joyful. Fourth, it would have programmed protections against usury, the charging of excessive interest that has trapped billions of people in debt slavery throughout history. Fifth, it would include jubilee protocols that prevent the permanent concentration of wealth and provide regular opportunities for economic fresh starts. Sixth, it would be governed by community consensus rather than centralized authorities, reflecting the biblical principle that power should be distributed rather than concentrated. This isn't just theoretical speculation. Teams of Christian technologists, economists, and theologians are already working on projects that implement these principles. They're building what some call kingdom economics for the digital age, systems that reflect God's heart for justice, mercy, and human dignity. But they face enormous challenges. Governments want control. Corporations want profits. Most people want convenience more than freedom. Building truly biblical economic systems requires sacrifice, vision, and the courage to swim against powerful cultural currents. The stakes couldn't be higher. If we get this right, we could see the greatest expansion of economic freedom and human flourishing in history. Digital currencies could eliminate the barriers that prevent billions of people from participating in the global economy. They could make financial services accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. They could enable new forms of generosity and community that we can barely imagine. If we get it wrong, we could see the emergence of economic control systems that make historical tyrannies look primitive by comparison. Programmable money in the wrong hands becomes programmable oppression. Surveillance currencies become tools of social control. Central bank digital currencies become mechanisms for implementing social credit scores that reward compliance and punish dissent. The choice is ours, but the window for making it is rapidly closing. Once these systems are implemented and people become dependent on them, changing course becomes exponentially more difficult. We need to act now, while we still have the freedom to choose. So what can you do? First, educate yourself about digital currencies and blockchain technology. You don't need to become a programmer, but you need to understand the basics of how these systems work and what's at stake. Second, support projects and organizations that are building biblical alternatives to the surveillance currencies being developed by governments and corporations. Third, have conversations with your family, friends, and church community about these issues. Most people have no idea what's coming or how it will affect their lives. Fourth, contact your representatives and demand that any digital currency implementations include strong privacy protections and limits on government surveillance powers. Fifth, consider how you can use your skills, resources, and influence to support the development of economic systems that reflect biblical values. Whether you're a technologist who can contribute code, an investor who can provide funding, or simply someone who can spread awareness, you have a role to play in this crucial moment. The digital shekel isn't just about money. It's about the kind of world we want to leave for our children and grandchildren. It's about whether technology will serve human flourishing or human oppression. It's about whether we'll implement the economic wisdom found in Scripture or repeat the mistakes that have plagued humanity throughout history. We stand at a moment of unprecedented opportunity and unprecedented danger. The same technologies that could usher in an age of economic freedom and biblical prosperity could also create systems of control that would make escape nearly impossible. The difference lies in the choices we make today, while we still have the power to make them. The ancient Israelites faced similar choices. They could follow God's economic principles and experience blessing, or they could adopt the systems of surrounding nations and face the consequences. History shows us what happened when they chose poorly. We have the same choice today, with even higher stakes and greater potential impact. The digital shekel represents more than just technological innovation. It represents the possibility of economic redemption, systems that reflect God's character and serve His purposes in the world. But it will only happen if people of faith engage with these issues thoughtfully, courageously, and with the urgency this moment demands. The future of money is being written right now. The question is whether that future will reflect the wisdom of ages or repeat the errors of the past. Whether it will serve human dignity or human control. Whether it will embody biblical principles or abandon them entirely. The choice is ours, but only if we choose to make it.